Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Herbal Knowledge Keepers. I'm here with Dakota Granny Woman. I'm Blue Star Dear Woman. And this episode is all about spring. And we are going to get to share with you the plants and the vegetation that you can forage and the wild things, the delectables that are surrounding you right now in the Arkansas environment that you can enjoy and partake in. So welcome to the show. And again, and a reminder, you can always ask questions via the Facebook group, Herbal Knowledge Keepers. Look for us there. Hello, Dakota.
Hello. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So anyway, you're looking at the herbal database, the section on wild food. And with spring come flowers. So by no means are these all of the flowers that we can eat. There are many more, but it literally would just be hundreds of flowers, and that would be crazy to try to add them all here. Well, here under the main heading for flowers are a few more that you can look at. They're not all linked up, but it just gives you an idea.
Well, I just saw basil go by. You know, I do nosh on the herbs. We have herbs around the basil and the oregano.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is a list of the flowers that you can eat. So the basil flowers are good, and arugula flowers, chamomile flowers. So I'm going to lower that, and we're just going to go through some of these early spring flowers. Now, of course, dandelion. We'll go back to that in a minute, but I want to pull up the eastern redbud because this is something that will be blooming very soon, and it has a beautiful edible flower. The edible flower turns into a pea pod that's like a snow pea, and if you watch it carefully, when that pod starts really looking like a snow pea, it's a good substitute for the snow pea, and you can pick them and freeze them. You don't want it to get too old, or the seed inside just gets pretty hard and they're inedible at that point. So with the red bud, those flowers are great in salads or in desserts, and you can use them real creatively. For example, you can make a red bud smoothie. Isn't that sweet? In fact, a lot of the flowers you could add.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons...
That's beautiful.
Isn't it? Yeah. One of the reasons that we like to use the flowers is because they're so nutritious. They're really, really high in flavonoids and different phytochemicals that, according to the color, the carotenes, various colors are signifying different types of constituents that are in them, and they're just really loaded. It's like having a food supplement on the go. So whenever you can use the flowers in the spring, it's just a really good idea. Of course, you know, we don't want to do that in a way that denudes the landscape or anything like that. But we can be very conscious.
So don't try to commercialize you.
Yeah.
So don't try to commercialize your food.
Yeah. And, you know, the insects and the bees and things like that need them too. So we always want to think of the wild creatures and what their needs are, and we don't want to take away from them any more than we already have. So I'm just going to go through a few more of these flowers that we have coming around. The Johnny Jump Ups, and that's kind of a catch-all phrase for a lot of different flowers in the viola family, the real small little, they look like little pansies. It could be any of these. Have you ever seen those teeny tiny little tiny pansy flowers that come up in the spring?
Yes, I have.
Well, those are, you can eat those too, and those will be pretty also sprinkled on a dessert that you're making or whatever. They're pretty small, but and the whole Johnny Jump Up plant is edible. In fact, all of the violets, I'm just going to click on this genus, Viola genus. I've only colored a few of them blue, which means edible, But all of these violets are edible. We have a lot of them. And the springtime is a good time to eat the flowers because they don't set seed until they bloom again in the autumn. So you don't have to worry about, oh
Mhm.
dear, I'm going to destroy the ability of this plant to reproduce. That's not going to happen. Of course, the violet greens are really good too, and they come up pretty early. Of course, the chickweed, and it's up now
Mhm.
all over the place here. That flower is edible, but you're going to be eating the greens on that. Are you getting that at all where you are?
I haven't seen the chickweed
Okay,
yet.
let's go back to the flowers for a second. Well, we've got in Arkansas, we've got the white water lily. That's just a little early for that, a little early for the dayflower. But these flowers are going to be coming up pretty soon. So just keep an eye out for them. And you can come to the database and just double check to see if they're edible. They probably are. Let's go to,
Hmm. Do you have dandelions over
yeah,
there, Dakota? I haven't seen dandelions
yeah,
yet.
they're actually, we
Okay.
kind of
I
had blossoms throughout the winter. It was really weird. I mean, early winter.
Ooh.
But let's look up dandelion. I'm,
Hmm.
I'm sure everyone who's watching this is already familiar with dandelion flowers. The dandelion flower is something that's really good to add to your, pick the flower itself, pull up the green part and add it to whatever you're eating. You're going to get a lot of beautiful carotenoids that way, and it's really loaded. Here are some studies on the health effects of eating the dandelion flowers, and you can dehydrate them for
Hmm.
long-term use. You can use them to make a dandelion flower lemonade. They protect the skin from UV rays, which is really a good thing because that's been pretty high. And they're antioxidants. We've got a bunch of dandelion flower recipes in here. And you'll have to just kind of click on these links to get them. Sweet and
Okay.
savory dandelion rosemary shortbread, fried dandelions, dandelion cookies. It goes on and on. Here's a dandelion oil recipe, but we're going to stick with the edibles right now.
Dakota, we
We
have
do?
a participant. Linda's
Oh,
online with
Linda,
us.
hi.
Yeah,
What? We weren't expecting anybody.
and she said,
We were.
mm,
I'm
"I
trying out a
know."
new computer, and we thought we're just going to do this between the two of us in case this computer doesn't work. But it's so good to see you, Linda.
So isn't that? Yeah, and she had asked the question. She said, "Hi, yes, I have chickweed, dandelions, cleavers, henbit, dock, among others.
Oh,
Nice to see you
yeah,
too."
yeah. Well, Linda is in Oklahoma and she's further south than we are, so she gets things first.
Mm.
So anyway, let's go to the shoots because we're going to be having edible shoots coming up. So let's see. I'm just going to talk about the ones that we have in Arkansas, but that'll be Oklahoma too. And in fact, when I say Arkansas plants, a lot of them are really widespread. So keep your eye. If you have bamboo growing anywhere, those shoots are going to be coming up.
Yeah, the bamboo is starting to come up for
Have you
sure.
got it where you are?
Yes, we have two kinds of bamboo.
Okay. Well, all of them really are edible, and so those are a couple of links that you can go to. But you just peel back the outer part, and the inner part that's kind of white is what you can use. And even if you just have real small, that thin kind of diameter bamboo, there'll still be something there that you could use. And it's a good idea because bamboo can kind of take over. So if you're going to be
Hmm.
pulling the shoots out to, the young shoots, and because you want to keep it under control, you might as well eat them. And there's a recipe here for the bamboo rice cakes, which is pretty cool. And other shoots that we have, let's see here. If you have this tree devil's walking stick, it has a shoot that is edible. And when I say shoot, you know what I'm talking about, yes?
Yeah, the outer
Uh-huh.
covering, correct?
The young shoot is the part that the new, when a plant starts growing, like a new plant starts coming up, they're called shoots. With the devil's walking stick, you can use the young shoots and young leaves. Now, it's a very thorny tree. This is what it looks like in its full glory. And people who've met it will never forget it
Hmm.
because it really is thorny. Anyway, the young shoots coming up in the spring are edible. It's interesting because it's something the natives used for controlling diabetes years ago. Okay, let's go to some more shoots. We've got this large flower bellwort, and it has a shoot that comes up. Do you recognize that? Have you seen that anywhere?
Oh
Isn't it
no.
beautiful?
I'm trying to ice. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Look at how pretty that
Isn't
comes up.
it gorgeous? Anyway,
Mm.
so those shoots, and one of the things about the whole business of eating these wild foods is that we do it very conservatively, always mindful of conserving the plant's stand so that it survives year after year,
Hmm.
always conscious of what kind of needs the animals have. And with a lot of plants, there's a movement called Eat the Invasives, where by eating some of these wild plants, you can keep them under control. And so that's really what we want to do. We want to go with those first. But that grows in Arkansas. And then, of course, the horseweed. We've talked about this before, I think, because this is a beautiful substitute for tarragon. And you might recognize that. It grows in a lot of gardens.
Oh yeah.
Linda, do you have that growing? She's thinking about it. Anyway, that believe it or not, they make an essential oil out of that too. But that has a shoot that comes up early in the year, and that's edible. So this is really the time to be keeping
Hmm.
an eye out for these different kind of shoots. Solomon seal, the fall Solomon seal, and the smooth Solomon seal that we have here in Arkansas, they both send up a shoot that's edible, and that was one of the main foods that certain Asian monks, I think it was Chinese monks, used after the winter time to restore their energy. They would go looking for the shoots of the Solomon seal because they were like superfoods. We've got
You have a picture of that one?
which one? The false?
I like it.
Um,
I like it when you show the pictures.
yeah, there are pictures if you click on that
Okay.
link. I've been working on the new version of the database, and that has pictures everywhere.
Right.
But now I have to come back to this version, which is the existing version, almost exactly the same, but there's a lot of stuff that I have to add to this one. So that I've been doing that. Pictures is one of the things that I've been adding.
Yeah, sure.
So, well, there's a picture of the smooth Solomon seal, and that's the real Solomon seal. That also has an edible root. So this is polygonatum.
And the two genus,
What?
those two genus grow here in
Yeah,
Arkansas,
so
yes?
the smooth Solomon seal is the polygonatum, and I'll pull up the genus for the false Solomon seal. You'll see they look very similar, but um, the berries are also used on that one. Let's see, we don't have knotweed, giant knotweed here. We don't have the angelica. We do have this feathered, plumed coxcomb. The young shoots and leaves can be eaten. That's an
Mm.
annual though. So that would just be that's not a perennial. So if you plant that, it's really technically not a wild food here. But if you, for example, have a lot of it that you've planted and you're going, geez, I really overdid it and I've got too much, I got to thin it out. You could just, instead of just pulling it out and throwing it away, you could eat the young shoots that you're going to pull out and the young leaves.
Hmm.
Okay, so another thing that I'm going to skip around a little bit, the maples are flowering now. They make a seed.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And most of this foraging, you recommend that we eat it raw
Oh
or
no, it
like,
does.
in a
No, no.
smoothie?
What
But there,
what you need to do really is when you go to, I'm assuming that right at this point that folks have already learned the basics about safe foraging. This isn't a show to go over that. Um, But
Mm-hmm.
some plants have poisonous parts. Some plants are poisonous unless they're cooked. And once they're cooked, they're safe
Yeah.
to eat. So you really have to read up on them before you do anything. The maple tree seeds are, it's a winged seed, and between the two wings there's a seed. So you pop that out, and the best time to do it is in the springtime when they're fresh and green, and they're very delicious and nutritious.
Mm.
But it's also a winter food because sometimes they are still laying around somewhere in the winter if you absolutely had to have something, but they're kind of dried up and shriveled and all that kind of stuff. Now, I think I am going to click on a link.
Well, I have something to add about those.
Okay.
In back east, we used to call those pollywogs.
Oh,
And when they're green and you open them up,
uh-huh.
you can stick them on your nose and wear them because they're a little gluey inside.
Oh, well, I'll have to add that. Anyway, this
Yeah.
just shows you how to pop them out, and you can eat them a lot of different ways. But here we see that they do have tannins, and so you want to taste them and see how they are. And if they're too bitter, then you just boil them in the water. So there are some specific ways to prepare these wild foods. Once you learn what they are, then you're good to go. So that's under winter edible parts. You know, some places it's still pretty much winter time. I guess we might as well bring this up because there are plants that you can eat in the winter and they're still good through the winter time. So if you have Jerusalem artichokes and they grow wild here, you can be digging those up throughout the winter time. And same with juniper berry. That's really good to use as a condiment. And if you're making sauerkraut, it's excellent in sauerkraut, and you can ferment it into a really delicious drink. And a lot of the roots, like the dandelion root, it might still be edible. You know, sometimes it just depends on how old the plants are and that sort of thing. And of course, if the ground's frozen, forget it. And don't forget lichens. We aren't going to get into that too much this time, but a lot of lichens are edible and they're really a survival food. And in the database, we have information on the different lichens and how to use them. You may still find watercress through the winter in some areas, and it's coming up now. That's going to be for greens or the flowers for sure. Rose hips may be hanging on through the winter. The pigweed can still have seeds. So some of these plants have edible seeds that you can turn into flour or just cook up. Hawthorn berries, sometimes we have them in Arkansas. They may last through the winter as well. Cattail roots can be good in the winter time if you want to get into that water. And then American wintergreen. So these are some of the plants, the inner bark of trees. That's listed separately right here. These are some of the trees. The inner cambium bark is edible, and you have to develop a taste for some of them. With pine bark, that's pretty well known. The best time to get pine bark is really in the spring, and it's also medicinal. Here you can see that it's antimicrobial. Here is a video on how to make flour from pine bark. It's very high in pycnogenol, which you may have heard of as a supplement. You're familiar with that, aren't you, Linda? And
Yes, I have heard
yeah,
about that.
so
Uh-huh.
that's where it comes from, although there are certain species that are higher. We have the eastern cottonwood, and the inner bark of that is edible. Maple bark, of all of the maple trees, the inner bark is edible there too. And here's instructions on how to make bread from bark.
Mm.
We don't have spruce here. The birches, um, you can eat the inner bark of those. Poplars, different poplars, that includes, see, eastern cottonwood. The willow barks are edible, black alder. So there's a variety of barks here that are edible. I'm not going to go so far as to say they're delicious, but um, you know, for people who absolutely have to get something to eat. I didn't add slippery elm bark here because that was traditionally one of the main inner barks that people ate, but it's a threatened tree. And so I'm not even suggesting that you take the bark off that unless you're growing it and have a whole huge supply of it. But so I think I'll talk about clover for a minute. Clover's all over the
Mhm.
place, and here are a lot of videos and instructions in the database that you can go to get more information. But the big thing about clover, the flower is edible, but you want to catch it before it starts turning brown. The leaves can also be eaten. The reason is that once the clovers start to get older and kind of like, I guess you could say, they sort of rot a little bit, there's something in it that is
Mhm.
a coumarin that changes as it decays into coumadin, which is like warfarin. It's a heavy blood thinner, and that can be dangerous. Now, if you quickly dry the
Mhm.
flower or, you look at the flowers, don't just grab a whole bunch of them and eat them, but look at them and see what their condition is. If they look fresh, they're good, and you can make like a tempura with them, or you can carefully dry them and make like a clover flour, or just grind them up and add them to different things. They're different things. Here's a recipe
Mhm.
for a white clover pudding. I'm just going to show you, this is the genus where most of our clovers are. We've got a lot of clovers. Most of these are in Arkansas. And so if you're not sure what kind of clover you have, you can come to the database and check it out. This one is really pretty. I love this one. I'm going to get off on a tangent here. Isn't that
It's
cool?
oh wow, I like
We've got
that.
that.
Yeah, the clover that I'm familiar with is the red
Yeah.
clover.
And then there's also crimson clover, which is also sometimes people think they're going to grow red clover and they wind up with this one, which is quite different, but
Oh yeah,
it's also edible. Yeah, isn't that
nice.
pretty? And so we've got a lot of really
Yeah.
cool clovers here. All site clover. Isn't that pretty?
Ooh,
I know.
yeah.
All right. So, Linda, is there anything in particular you want to talk about since we have you with us?
Oh, okay. She's got a question up. Let me look. See what she's got here. Oh, she said, "Forgive me, but I've been talking to myself. We'll figure this out. I hope." I was asking about uses for sycamore and winged elm. I love the clover.
Okay. So,
So she wants to
okay.
know.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the saps. That's something else that we really should cover because spring is when you do your sapping. Let's go through here and
Mm.
find the sap. So all of these trees you can collect sap from. Did I add sycamore too? Where is it? Yeah, here, American sycamore. So some people complain about sycamore sap, saying that it's not worth doing. But I used to tap sycamore and I liked it. And let me pull that up. Mostly what you do with sycamore is is you tap it for sap. All right, I'm gonna
Is it a similar process to when you tap a
yeah,
maple?
all of you tap them all the same way. So Linda, you tap that one.
Okay.
And here under tapping, under sap, there are instructions about how to do it. So here's some instructions.
Hmm.
You want a tree that's at least 18 inches in diameter. And then, so anyway, Linda, that's there in the database. I know you're in the database, so you can just go to this section and you can tap any of these trees. And a lot of them, like the birch, the beech, the sap is just taken as a beverage. You don't have to do anything with it. I did make let's see, I can't remember if I tapped a birch or a beech, but one of those I experimented making a beer with. And it didn't turn out that great, but I think it's worth
Yeah.
it's worth keeping it up and getting some skill at brewing with that. But on the maples, one of the things I want to mention, the box elder, that's surprising because in the old days, the old timers preferred for sugaring with box elder to sugar maple. They got better
Hmm.
sugar.
Also,
We have edible tree leaves in the early spring, so edible tree leaves. And these are the young leaves. Just as these leaves are coming out, they're really good. And so that's your mulberry leaf, the devil's walking. Of course, pine needles we can use all year, but those young needles are the best.
mm-hmm,
If you have mimosa trees, you can
mm-hmm,
eat the young leaves there. Sugar maples, any
mm-hmm,
of the maple leaves, and
mm,
the beech,
nice.
the basswood leaves. So those are all, we don't have this red tune. We have most of these trees here.
And the other one, uh, Linda had also asked you about the elm, the winged elm, I believe it was
Now let me
called.
just see here. Some of
Let's
the,
see. Yeah,
let's,
winged.
it's not in here yet. It will be, Linda. Nope, I've only got two here. It might be in the other database, so Linda, I'll add that for you. That's what we do with the database. Priority goes to members who make requests for information. So, Linda, I'll put some stuff in there on Wing Down for
Right.
you.
And it's time for us to
Okay.
wrap it up, Dakota. And I want to remind people they are viewing the herbal database. And this is something that you can have access to. And also in our earlier episodes, there are demonstrations. We break down um, a lot of how to. Were you closing
I
that?
was
Excuse
try
me, Dakota. Were you closing the
I was
window?
trying to, but
I'll
okay.
close it here. Here we go. Okay. And so in the earlier episodes, Dakota and I spend a lot of time breaking down how to use the herbal database, because the whole theme of this show is to introduce you to how you can become empowered and acquire knowledge, become your own empowered healer by having a wonderful database that has hundreds of thousands of references and ways for you to do your research. .org. You go there and you can subscribe to the base. And Linda's saying, thank you. You're so welcome, Linda. I'm so glad you
Me
popped
too.
in. You surprised us. Okay. Well, keep looking for more episodes. We're back on it. And again, go to the Facebook group, Herbal Knowledge Keepers. And Dakota, I think you're on it.
So, all right, loves.
All right.
We'll
That's
see you
good.
around,
All
and
right.
come to classes in the Ozarks too.